You have to know yourself. I think that's the most important thing, and know your habits and like bad habits. So for me, my bad habit is if I see the money, it's up for grabs, So the big thing is really just kind of, for me, I hide my money. Like again, it goes to assets, or I put it in like a savings account in another bank that I don't really check much. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have a shit ton of money. Let's go do this.
You're checking out the Investor Shed podcast with Nick Beveridge and Jeremy Kitchen. They're on the path to financial freedom, and they're taking their community with them. Stay tuned for the best free real estate investing advice on the internet.
Everybody, thank you for coming back to the Investor Shed podcast, or if this is your first time listening, welcome. Hopefully you stay for more than a minute. My co-host today is Jeremy Kitchen. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I thought you were going to throw people a loop and say my co-host is someone other than Jeremy Kitchen. I'm still here, ladies and gentlemen. And speaking of still here, we got Dan Corwin.
Dan the man.
Dan the man.
The action man.
Dan the action man. You understand Dan. Dan's an awesome guest. I loved having him on. He's only been investing for a couple years, but he's just taken the slow and steady route of taking 1 to 2 rentals or flips a year, and it's immensely increased his net worth. It's really cool watching him grow.
Heck yeah. Yeah. And he admits, one of his first house, he kind of bought in the peak, but he's still buying and he's still making it work.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets into all the nitty gritty of his journey, and I think you guys are going to like it. I really do.
I think it's a good episode.
We went over an hour because we just had a good conversation. We just kept going. So hopefully you get sucked in.
Yeah.
Like we did.
So what kind of snack or food should people be having for this episode, Nick?
I would say top ramen. It's getting colder out. People like to stay warm, and you want to stay warm in your belly with some really healthy ramen.
Really healthy ramen? This is not a product placement or endorsed by Top Ramen, but if you are part of the Top Ramen organization, call me.
Yep. Show that tattoo, Jeremy. Show it.
Bam! Right up there.
There it is. There it is. Sneak peek, everyone.
Yep.
All right. Enjoy this episode with Dan the man. Welcome back to the Investor Shed podcast. We've got the man, Dan. Dan Corwin, how are you?
I am great. Just luckily have a day off today and just trying to do a bunch of errands and get ready for a new rental to hopefully hit the market in the next week or two.
Yeah. I didn't know that pharmacists got days off.
Well, unfortunately, I work for the government, so, we get lots of days off.
Let's talk about that real quick. Tell me about your job.
So right now I'm a pharmacist in the Air Force. I've been in the Air Force for 9 years. So I manage a pharmacy, radiology, and the laboratory units over at the clinic here in Spokane at Fairchild Air Force Base. And yeah, my day job is a little bit of pharmacy, a lot of managing people. I oversee about 24, 25 people or so. And then I'm also the deputy, or like the assistant to my boss, because I'm the highest ranking major. So I typically will cover for him and manage about 100 people when he's gone. So, very busy, but it's a fun life. Get to move every few years, get to experience something new. So I do like it.
Do you get a deputy badge for that, Dan?
Unfortunately, they don't make a deputy badge yet. Maybe one day.
Well, there's nothing stopping you from making your own, but go ahead, Nick.
Oh, yeah. So I first met Dan at a meetup in Spokane. This was a few years ago, and I believe at the time, you sat down at our table. I don't think you were investing at the time. Can you correct me if I'm wrong?
That's correct. So I first moved to Spokane. I typically use an app called Meetup to kind of like meet people, experience something new. So I saw there was an investor meetup, and I'm like, this sounds interesting. So I went to the one that Kelly hosts to start, and that's where I met Blake and Jessica, because they were kind of presenting. And I got a kind of like starstruck, I guess, or like awe-inspired. They were a little bit younger than me, or are still a little bit younger than me. And I'm like, these people quit their jobs and they're like, have all these investment properties, and they just kind of passively live and do what they want, kind of in a way. I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. Like, I want to be that person one day. I want when I grow up. So then I kind of got like the investor bug, as I call it. So I went to the next meetup with the vet, and that's where I met you. And I think Jeremy was there too. So kind of met you guys, and it's kind of been a great journey so far, really good friends and really good investors to kind of communicate and grow with.
That's pretty cool. So you actually first got interested in investing just purely to meet new people. Does that sound right?
That is kind of correct, yes, in that sense. Just to meet new people, but I got like all inspired because of like, hey, you can do what you want, like kind of run your schedule. You can grow as fast as slow as you want. There's so many niches to real estate that it's not you're not like stuck doing just flips or stuck growing rentals, right? Like you do what everyone you can do commercial, and that's a whole nother beast, and so there's a lot of avenues, so you kind of you do what fits you best. And so I kind of thought that's awesome. It's kind of like pharmacy, where the pharmacists don't just aren't at CVS or Walgreens. There's pharmacists in hospitals, there's pharmacists at insurance agencies, there's clinical pharmacists that'll help make sure your cancer treatments are accurate, and there's no reaction. So we have it's kind of neat that it's multifaceted, and you kind of do what you want and what fits you best. And I like that. I like options. I don't want to be stuck and pigeonholed. I like options.
Cool. Well, yes, let's talk about your first deal, Dan. Obviously, so when you met Blake and Jessica, just for reference to everyone listening, Dan is referencing Blake and Jessica Thompson. Nick has had them on the podcast as well. They're good friends of ours as well. We tend to keep company with a lot of investor friends, so it's good to be all in the same area for sure. But Dan, if you don't mind, kind of tell me a little bit about your background. Obviously, you do have some military background. I want to dive into that and how that actually helped you get into real estate investing.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I guess for me, being real estate investor, you have to take action and you have to just have a plan and do things, even if it's not the greatest plan. You just need to take action. And so the military, like what ends up happening is because we have to kind of make things work, you have to send people out the door depending on what your mission is. You might not have the best plan. You might have to say, you know what, I know 70% of this information, just go with it. And full send, you make it happen, and you think on your feet. It's like, well, this process is broken. I'm like, okay, well, let's fix this little thing. It's going to suck, everyone. I'm sorry. We deal with it. We'll get through it in the next week. Sorry. Like it happens a lot. Like the government tends to patchwork and buy things that don't always work together. So when they don't, you're kind of SOL, and you're like, okay, well, we're just going to make it work. Sorry, team. This is our fix, and it'll be like this for 2 weeks. And it's kind of like anything in real estate. Things break. You're like, oh, wow, I just ripped through a water line. We have to fix this. But how do we keep the flip going without like delaying? Because, when you're doing a flip, when you delay, that's more money you're burning. So it's kind of the same thing. You think on your feet.
So what you mentioned there, right from the start, you mentioned action. You're an action guy. You're trained to take action, and I feel like that's where a lot of wannabe investors really struggle. They don't surround themselves with other investors regularly, like you did. You went to a meetup, and then you kept going back, and you kept surrounding yourself with friends that invest in real estate. And eventually you get the bug, but you can't really do anything. People can get the bug, but they can't actually do anything unless they take action. And I think those are two huge ingredients if you actually want to be financially free one day through real estate, is you've got to be able to surround yourself with other investors that are doing what you want to do regularly, and then you have to take action regularly. So I think we can end this podcast right now. You just gave the two biggest secrets for investing in real estate. So this has been a great podcast. I want to thank you, Dan.
We're not done. We're not done. Knock it off, Nick. We got plenty to talk about here. But like I said, Dan, like I do want to kind of dive in. Obviously, like your specifically VA benefits. I want to talk about like how you got your first house, what the numbers kind of looked like, how long you've had it, and what you've done with that house since then.
Oh, yeah. So actually, my first house I bought in Hawaii when I was stationed there. That was my first experience with like buying a house. It was actually a condo, a 3-2 condo, newly renovated. It was really nice, but because I didn't have a great investor mindset, and honestly, I was very ignorant of like how loans and everything worked, and I didn't ask questions, and that was my own stupidity. It was like when interest rates were going down. So every year I would refinance, which was great because my monthly payment would go down, but my loan restarted. So when I was ready to move out of Hawaii, I'm like, oh, let me rent it out. That's, of course, what everyone does. But to do that with a property manager, I would be taking like a $400 a month loss. And at the time, I'm like, why would I do that? And in retrospect, if I had surrounded myself with people who kind of, or at least ask questions about like, hey, what can I do? Like, there's a lot of cool things about VA benefits. And so with that loan, I just kind of sold the property took whatever. I didn't have that much money because I refinanced the year before, so I didn't have a lot of money from it. But luckily, I had some money in savings that bought a conventional loan, single family in Cheney, Washington, 3.2, which is pretty normal, pretty generic for that neighborhood. And pretty much it was newly fixed up. The only thing I really did to it was like added some nice things to the backyard, painted a wall. I did redo the kitchen. In retrospect, because I wasn't looking at investing, I shouldn't have redone the kitchen because that was a $20,000 investment. I think I went a little over engineered in retrospect, but at the time I'm like, this is my home. I like it. Let me just fix it up and make it nice. And then I moved out, 5 months later.
And sorry if I missed that. Did you keep that house?
Yes, that's my first rental property. I kept that one. The nice thing, I think, once I redid the kitchen, though, I kind of thought, oh, I will make this a rental. I actually kept all the kitchen cabinets and used them as like a man garage, like lots of shelves, added a few outlets, so that way it has more utility, but also, people like that stuff. So I kind of said, you know what? Rather than throw out the cabinets and pay somebody to get rid of them, I'll just keep them. And I kept all the appliances rather than have them hauled out. I sold them, just trying to be ingenuitive and kind of figure out some ways, not to just waste, but, do something different.
That is a fantastic, hack. Yeah, just take the kitchen cabinets that aren't that bad. If you're going to upgrade them, put them in the garage. People love that. You're totally right. And they don't have to be, shiny brand new cabinets in a garage. Just anything's better than floor space.
Right.
Yeah.
People aren't going to be putting their fine china in their garage. They're going to be putting, tools and just stuff they don't use that often. So I think that's a really good idea. Dan, real quick, I want to touch on your Hawaii property. You said you refinanced it. Did you refinance it once or twice?
Twice, actually.
Twice? Okay. And obviously, like when you refinance and the rates are going down, it sounds great in theory, but every time you do that, unless I'm aware with something different on the VA, obviously, but you're paying 2 to 5% typically on a refinance fee every time you do that, right?
Yes, but the VA does have a unique program, which I didn't know. I think I just did generic refinances. Because they were lower rates, I think a lot of the money got built back into the loan, or that's how the VA designs it. But the VA does have a very specific product called the IRRL. It's an internal rate reduction loan. There's another R in there. I don't know what it stands for off the top of my head. But essentially, you don't pay any closing costs. It's only like $2,000 or $3,000, and it's refinances the whole loan to a lower rate. Very unique to the VA, but I didn't know about it at the time because I didn't surround myself with people that could tell me, or I didn't even ask because I didn't think it was an option. You get the stuff in the mail. Hey, refinance, we could lower your rate and lower your monthly payment. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm one of those consumers. I'm not going to ask questions.
I'm a good American citizen. Look at that. I've paid my bills and now I get a refinance to a lower rate. Job well done, Dan.
That's right. So, with the VA, luckily with those benefits, you get to refinance with a much lower cost in their loan products. So it's one of the unique things and one of the nice benefits. But from the Cheney house, I did buy a duplex. That I did use for my VA loan. So that was pretty nice because I got a pretty good sized duplex. Each side is 4 and 2 with a 2-car garage. And so I bought that with the VA loan. So I only put like 5 or 10% down just to kind of make sure all the money or the numbers work better for me. So it kind of house hacked each side, or my side and the tenants who I inherited. We kind of each just been paying 50% of the mortgage, which has been nice. So it's not like I'm paying extra or have to come out of pocket too much to pay more of the mortgage.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty big duplex, a 4-2 on each side.
Yeah, it's a good size. I think the side, because I renovated it all myself for the most part, I think it was 1,400 square feet. It was like 60 boxes of flooring, if that's helpful to get you an idea.
That tells you how big a house is. How big is the house? Oh, it's 60 boxes of flooring. Got it. Okay, it's about 1,400 square feet in my head.
It's something like that. I just remember because I hand moved every box of flooring into my car and from my car to the house. It was painful.
Okay, with a car or a truck?
Nope, I did it with my Bronco Sport. So I did 3 trips back and forth to Lowe's because it was a little over half a pallet of flooring.
Yeah, I've had to make multiple trips with flooring jobs too. Yeah, you can't always get it all. It's very heavy load.
I remember I borrowed your truck one time, Nick. You're like, go pick up all this flooring from Costco, and I did. And your truck, I swear, it was doing a wheelie the entire way home. The guy's like, this is not the payload you're supposed to have.
Yeah. You know what's funny is a few months after that, the driveline fell out. Maybe that's why.
No. I sign no waivers when I'm picking up flavor or flooring for you, so I'm sorry about your truck.
Before we skip the Cheney house, I feel like we're moving on a little too far. What was your payment on that, and how much were you getting for rent?
So my payment is around 1560 plus or minus, that fluctuates with the tax assessments. Right now I'm renting it for 1897 for it. And I'll probably raise the rent a little bit. They're really good renters. They're military families. So like one thing I like about the military, here's a little secret that if they don't pay rent, you tell the base and they garnish their wages. So renting to military is very nice because, you're getting your money some way, either through them or you call the base and they'll figure out who it is and they'll get you the money. So they're gonna pay.
Yeah. And you're your own property manager on that, correct, Dan?
That's correct. For right now, I still manage all my own properties.
Sure. That's a wild thing, and I commend you for that for sure. But yeah. So yeah, obviously you're cash flowing a little bit on that one, and you have security because you have a military family in there. Not like you ever want to tell on another fellow military person. Like, that doesn't feel like the way I would think you would handle it. But if push comes to shove, you can, right?
That's exactly it. For the most part, the nice thing with military people, they get their own like monthly housing allowance. So with the housing allowance, this is what you're supposed to use for your mortgage, and so that's what they do. Most people do. So it's kind of a nice little thing about military people. We get the housing allowance.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys are pretty reputable and everything like that too. So
The worst thing that can happen is you get nicknamed Tattletale Dan.
that'll tell Dan.
That's true. And the good and the bad thing with the military, though, you move every few years. So if you earn a reputation somewhere, you move and you figure out and reinvent yourself at a new place. So it'll change.
So, and what year did you buy this Cheney house, Dan?
2021. So that was like the height of the craze. Actually, so funny story. So I bought the house, or we were under contract for like 360,000, and I thought, oh, that's a good price for the area. Well, the appraisal came back 30,000 under that, so it was 330,000. And so I kind of started learning a little bit how to negotiate. Where I'm like, okay, they don't want to go out of contract because it goes back on the market another month or two, and then they have to start all this process over. So I said, hey, I'll give you 330,000 for the mortgage. I'll give you, I think I said $5,000 or $10,000 in cash, which good, bad, and different. It got me in the house because I needed a house. But I kind of got a little discount in my head at the time because of the appraisal. So I'm like, sometimes people hate those appraisals, but when you're the buyer, you're like, psh, you know what? I hope it's under because then I can negotiate a little bit down.
Right, gives you a little bit of buying power for sure. So yeah, you bought that in 2021 then, and you lived in that house for roughly about a year, you said, right?
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to think. A year and a few months. Yeah, because October of 22, I moved out and bought the duplex. I was actually looking before that, and like Nick was saying, taking action. I was actually under contract and had a duplex that could be changed to a fourplex under contract. And again, same thing happened. The appraisal came like $50,000 under contract price, but they didn't want to wheel and deal with me. They said, you know what, we're going to walk away, and so walked away and went back to the market. But it was a fun experience. Got to learn about like inspections and tenants and rent rolls and a little bit of that before I actually bought a property that actually involved me, pedal to the metal on that one.
Sure. And just for reference, was this when you bought this duplex? It was already been a year since I helped you moved into that thing. Then, correct? Like, when did you move in?
Oh, I moved in the next month. You helped me move in the next month. Yep.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. It just the year kind of seems like it flew by me. So I'm just making sure this is the right property we're talking about.
No, no, no. It is. Yeah, it's the Garland property, and it was last year, Jeremy. Hate to break it to you. It's only been a year.
Wow, time flies when you're having fun.
So what was it like fixing up that duplex? Did you do it all with your own cash?
Yes. So fixed it up with all my own cash. It was kind of nice doing like a live and flip for me, mostly because like you could kind of slow roll it. And every month you could kind of play with your budget a little bit more. We're like, hey, I'm not gonna go do some trip, or I'm not gonna go to concerts, whatever, save some money. Okay, let me buy this flooring. Oh, next month let's do some stuff. Okay, I'm just gonna buy some odds and ends to finish some projects. So We kind of had a timeline in the project, but it was more or less like, hey, let's, just renovate it and make things happen, and just kind of kept doing editing and making new project lists. So essentially it was like we tried to start from the top with the kitchen and the main floor. And oh, it's a split level. That's probably also helpful for everyone to know. So start with the top floor, and then we moved to the bottom floor to finish it off, and learned a lot along the way of how to actually renovate, as well as like the best process. So like when we were renovating it, it was like, oh, let's do floors and painting right away. Well, in retrospect, we should have got rid of the popcorn ceiling on the first floor, which we didn't. But when we did the second floor, we're like, okay, let's do this right. We'll do the popcorn ceiling, then get rid of the carpets because we could roll it all into it, and then we'll do painting, then the floor and all the electrical. So, you got better after the first one.
Hey, when you're not used to doing contracting work, it's easy to do things out of order.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I've been doing it for like 10 years now, and we still don't get it right.
I was going to say, Dan, like even after your like second one, right, you're going to learn how to do it better off your second one than you did off your first, and then third off your second, right? So it's going to continue to steamroll into this big self-cleaning and fixing efficiency master. So good job.
One day, Andor, I'll just hire better experts to do it, and I'll just look at the big picture.
There you go. So yeah, let's talk about that duplex though. How much did you buy that duplex for?
Ended up buying it for 480,000, if I'm not mistaken. Put down like 35,000 or 40,000 on it, something like that. And so, yeah, it was listed actually for 515, and so we talked them down quite a bit just because it needed some repairs. The market was also kind of coming down a little bit, last spring, summertime, or sorry, summer and fall. So was able to probably knock them down about 30,000 off the listing price.
So these down payments and the remodel money, if you don't mind me asking, where's all this money coming from? Is it coming from your job, your savings account, or
Yeah, it comes from a lot of places. So one thing I got really good at early on, even in college, was putting money away and saving. So the military, we have this cool savings or a 401k. It's called a TSP, the Thrift Savings Plan. So the down payment for the duplex came from a self loan from my thrift savings plan, which is like our 401k. And so the nice thing is the self loan for a home loan is like you can borrow up to all the money you put into it. And it's usually like 1 or 2% lower than regular rates. So I think that loan is 2.5% over 10 years. I think I took it. And it comes right out of my own paycheck. So I don't have to worry about like whatever. It just comes out of my paycheck every month and pays it back over time. So it's super easy, super nice, and just a different avenue to borrow money, and you pay yourself back. That's the nice thing. I loaned it from myself, so it's almost like a IRA, but my own that I can use my own money for.
right? You're paying your self interest.
Right, exactly. I'm not paying anyone else or taking anyone else's IRA yet.
We don't know anything about taking anyone's IRA, do we, Dan?
Nope, definitely not.
Nope, don't know anything about that. I've lent him money out of my IRA. But I want to talk about that real quick, if you don't mind, real quick, Nick. So obviously your 401k, is that specific to the military, how you can lend it to yourself back, or is that with any civilian can do that as well?
That I don't know. I don't think most civilian products allow that. This might be a unique thing with the TSP program that allows you to do it. And the nice thing is you could do it for more than a home loan. Like if I wanted to add an ADU, I could do a self loan to add an ADU, and just the payback time is a lot less versus a home one. But yeah, you just take a general loan out and you say, yep, pay it back over 3-4 years, and there you go.
I think that's great. You can utilize what you're using for your retirement to get a down payment on a house, to pay it back so you still have your retirement. Just a really cool system you got going there.
Trying, got to find money all the places.
Awesome. So for the people out there listening that are still struggling, not sure how to do this thing, now you've heard 3 big things that Dan has created a habit of: meeting people on Meetup.
Yep.
Well, actually, showing up to being friends with investors, being friends with people that he wants to do what they do, and you take action, and you have this habit of saving money that you've had for a while. I don't know for sure, but do you spend your money on boats and stuff like that, or do you typically put most of your money away?
I try to put most of my money away. Lately, it's been spending it on houses, but
Assets.
yeah, assets. I've always subscribed to the habit of pay yourself first. So like, It's really knowing yourself. So for me, if I don't see the money in my bank account, it doesn't exist. So like I make sure all my investments automatically take it out like on the first, my life insurance policies, all my IRAs, all that stuff just takes it out so I don't see it and it doesn't exist. And I'm like, well, this is what I got to work with this month. I'm going to make it happen. So that just kind of sits and grows. And like by the time I needed it, I was already investing 7, 8 years. I'm like, oh, I have a decent amount of money. I'm gonna pull some out right now, and I don't have to worry about like where's this coming from today.
I do think there's something there that a lot of investors and a lot of people in general can take from that. Obviously, like myself, I've been an awful saver the last 15 years. But it's just come to my attention that I should really start putting some money away so I have some bigger money for bigger projects and bigger things. Just tired of living broke, basically. So trying to figure out better ways to save. Do you have any tips for anyone trying to just save if they were trying to buy a house? Like what steps would you recommend they take, Dan?
Ooh, that's a great question. You have to know yourself. I think that's the most important thing, and know your habits and like bad habits. So for me, my bad habit is if I see the money, it's up for grabs, So the big thing is really just kind of for me, I hide my money. Like again, it goes to assets, or I put it in like a savings account in another bank that I don't really check much, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I have a shit ton of money. Let's go do this. So one thing I don't use anymore, but I did when I needed to kind of get better habits. It was an app called Albert. It's the app kind of helps you track your spending habits, but it also pulls money out in small increments. And a lot of banks have this too, but it like puts it away for like rainy day fund, or I'm trying to save for like a car, and it'll pull based off of your spending habits and how much money you want to keep in your account. So like some weeks it would pull $5, some weeks it'll pull 20 or 30. And then like over a year you end up with a few $1,000s, and okay, now I could buy a car, or hey, I have all the closing costs and inspection costs for a house I want to buy. So at least you kind of have that covered. And again, it's know thyself, and that's very important because, if you don't, you're going to get into bad habits, or you're not going to realize your bad habits. And then, oh, I just unbeknownst spent like, 50K on all this house renovation and I blew my budget versus like, okay, this is my budget. This is where this like thing goes. And who's the guy? He talks about envelopes and paying bills with that.
Dave Ramsey?
Yes, Ramsey, kind of like know where you want your money to be and where to pull it and kind of your budgeting. So just kind of knowing all that and figuring it out and knowing yourself, I think, is the best key with all this.
Apps like that are really good. I downloaded this app when I was kind of somewhat of a newer real estate agent and I was struggling with money, but it was called Acorns.
Oh, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, every time I made a transaction anywhere with my debit card, it always rounded up and that money went to this account. And then every Friday, I think it just pulled $50. And it took a very short amount of time, like 9 months or to a year or something like that. And I had a few $1,000s and I was able to take that. And I think I invested in Tesla and it like doubled. But it was just really cool to like just the change that you never even notice or feel. And a lot of people, they can spend $50 a week and not even notice it. But just having that automatically set up, I set it up once. I spent 15 minutes setting that up, and then a year later had a few $1,000, and it's just great to have those automation tools in the background to help you save money.
Absolutely. And you said, Dan, that app you were talking about was called Albert, correct?
Yeah, it's called Albert. They have a bunch of little features, but for me, it was tracking the money. And the nice thing is it also like tells you like, hey, you spent this much on going to restaurants or this much on gas. And I'm like, why did I spend so much on gas? And it's like, oh, this is why. And I could substantiate it. But if I can, I'm like, okay, let's dig into that and find out what bad habit or what I did wrong this month that I can correct the next month to, save more.
I think there's another similar app to that called, I think it's called Mint. Same kind of thing, right? So they just track your finances. I recently downloaded this, and I know we're kind of getting a little off topic, but I think this is important for people to know when talking about saving and being disciplined with money. You download Mint, and then you can attach all of your accounts to it. So I downloaded it, and I put all of my credited accounts. So when I open it, I'm like, oh, I'm a negative net worth person right now, right? I've got debts, and it's just nice seeing all that stuff in one spot. So. Good to know for sure. Quick question about that too, Dan. Do you think your spending habits have anything to do with the discipline that you learned in the military?
Oh, I don't know, because I really picked up my spending habits like in college, even before the military. And I think it was because like like money like everyone else, but I think it kind of relates to one experience. I was 18, went to a casino, played blackjack, first time ever. I lost five hands in probably less than 5 minutes. And at 18, I blew $50. And I'm like, I never want to feel like that poor again and like wasting money essentially. So now I was like, after that, I was like, okay, I got to keep my money, like learn. Cause, 18, I think I was making like $7 an hour. So that was like, almost a full day's worth of work I just blew. So it's kind of like that experience really kind of said, okay, let me save money. And then like being in the military, they really harp, especially because depending on the how the government and the year, sometimes what happens in the military is like, hey, we need to cut people. Well, they call that a RIF, and I don't know what it stands for, but they say, thanks for your service. We know you have a contract, but out the door you go in 6 months. And if you don't have savings or a plan or anything to fall back on, you're kind of like, what do I do? So they've really been harping on like having the TSP, putting, the minimum away to match, which is 5%, and the government gives you 5% back, a lot of that kind of stuff. Because unless you put in 20 years and retire, like you walk away with the military with nothing other than whatever money you put away. There's, severance packages really don't exist. It's thanks for coming. Have a great life.
Yeah, thanks for your service. We appreciate you. And off you go.
That's exactly it.
So Nick and I know nothing, absolutely nothing about blowing money at casinos. Just so you know. For any listener out there, like Nick and I we're little angel men. We never go play blackjack at the casino.
Never.
Then we just change the topic from there. All right, so Dan, talking about your duplex, so obviously, so you renovated one side. You had tenants that were in one side when they were in there, correct? Were they current on their rents and everything when you got the property?
Yes, they were good on their rents. And so the property manager, when I bought it from, didn't seem like they were the most organized. And so I kind of also realized like, hey, if you're going to be a property manager, you need to have some sort of organization, at least where things are and what's going on with money. Because it took them like 2 months to get me the deposits from the previous renters. And I'm like, how hard is it? You should know, here's it in their contract. Send me the check like at closing or like right after. But like it took my realtor trying to track him down and harass him. He's like, oh, I got to do it. My wife does this. I'm like, so you can't tell me you as the property manager owner can't like just cut me a check. I'll meet you wherever. So I kind of like, hey, you got to be organized. And so that kind of helped me like make sure I had my at least system for payment, tracking, background checks, all that stuff kind of was implemented sooner than later because of that experience.
Sure. And if you don't mind, let's talk about your systems for that kind of stuff, because obviously for somebody trying to do their own self-property management, it sounds like a lot, and it sounds like something I would never want to do. But how do you do it? Like, how do you stay organized? What apps do you use to take payments, to do the background checks, etc.?
So I found a company called Tenant Cloud. They're okay. I'm probably going to end up switching at some point once they're done. They do all the background checks. You load the tenant information in, and they could do payments. The app or the program rather takes the payment and then sends it to your bank account once everything's linked. So, and the tenant can submit maintenance requests. You can load documents into it, like user manuals for like any of the appliances you buy, just other things in there. I haven't gotten to that level of detail yet. That's kind of my goal once I finish this flip, that we'll hopefully talk about a little bit later. Just getting reorganized. I think this winter will be helpful, but that's kind of my systems. Luckily, I only have the 2 rentals, and the third one will be coming up with the other side of the duplex. So it's not been too difficult. And luckily, the Cheney house that I own, the single family, everything was recently renovated or updated, so very little maintenance. So it's been pretty nice. They're pretty easygoing. And even the tenants in the other half of the duplex, they're super easygoing. Like you always hear horror stories of like inherited tenants. They've been really low key. Like they're just living their life and, in and out and don't really bother me, even though they know I'm the owner. I know that's always like a faux pas or people talk about, but they like never bother me. We see each other like in the backyard every once in a while, but it's been great so far. So far.
So far, yeah. Fingers crossed for you, buddy.
Exactly.
And then, Nick, do you have anything you wanted to touch on that duplex? We want to talk about what you're making for rents on it now, or?
Yeah, I'm curious, how often are these tenants communicating with you?
I would say maybe every couple months, maybe, other than like payments. But a lot of times it's me reaching out like, hey, I want to do this maintenance, or what issues are you having? So one thing I think is a lot of people don't like or don't do is being proactive a lot of times, and they don't want to ask like, what are your issues? They just wait to be at an issue. So for me, I'll reach out like the tenants. They're like, "Oh, some of the electrical outlets are a little loose." So go over, look at them. Oh, they are indeed loose. So you know what? Just replace them, and it makes their life easier. But you're also being proactive because if there's a loose electrical cord and it wiggles out or whatever, can cause a fire or like burn the wall. So now you have to make sure the drywall is clear, clean all the electrical out, right? So being proactive I think is helpful. So like the other thing, I reached out to the tenants recently. I was making sure all the plumbing had correct access and insulation because last year it got really really cold, like in the negatives, and just wanted to make sure. So I reached out and they're like, yeah, we'll be home, and they plumber comes by, cuts an access wall, throws some stuff in, and fixes whatever he needs to. And it's usually me reaching out, believe it or not, more than them reaching out to me.
Yeah, no, I commend you for being such a good landlord. I like to just, when I finish a property, I hand it over to my property manager and I say, here, take it forever. I don't want to know anything about tenants. Don't ever call me, please.
Don't call me about anything.
Yeah. And then I get calls from my property manager randomly. I'm like, no, what? What is it? What do I have to fix?
What did I pay you for?
Yeah. I'm doing something.
I'm really busy over here. No, that's great.
But no, it's good just again, you're taking action. You're taking the initiative to make sure that you're preventing things that can and will eventually go wrong, and you're doing it in advance so it doesn't end up costing you more down the line. So I commend you for actually doing the right thing. Not a lot of people do business the way you do, including myself. I wish I can be a little bit braver like you. I'm just not that kind of person.
I think there's a fear too. Obviously, like if I reached out to a tenant and said like, "Hey, can I fix anything?" They're gonna give me a laundry list of things. I think you can be proactive, but not like completely proactive, right?
Well, and I think the big thing is it's being honest and upfront. Like, okay, here's this list. Here's the 3 things I think I'm going to get done, but it's going to take me a month or two. Sorry, but at least if they know that, it's not like, oh my God, he told me he's going to fix it. He should have been here last week. It's, oh no, he told me it's going to be a couple months, and then when I reach out and it's been that couple months, like, oh yep, he's honest or on track, whatever needs to happen. So like even if they have an issue and they want me to fix it, I'm like, okay, this is not emergency, or like that's what I'm thinking in my head. Okay, can I come by next month, or can you give me like 6 to 7 weeks? I got this going on, and just let them know that. A lot of times they're like, oh yeah, that's not a problem. Just let me know when you're by. And I think open and honest communication, people just kind of not forgotten. They just think they're just too scared to be like honest. Like, oh my God, if I tell them 2 months, they're gonna hate me and do all this damage. No, we're all people. Like we all have lives and things to do.
We're gonna run that back into your Cheney house, obviously. So if you tell on your Cheney house people, they're gonna call you Tattletale Dan. But if you're being forthcoming with your Spokane house, they're gonna call you Honest Dan. So I guess take both nicknames into consideration here.
That's right. I try to be an enigma. Never know which way I'm coming.
He's an honest tattletale over here. I love it. Let's talk about your rents on that one though. So obviously you bought it recently. You said you bought it for what was it, 450,000?
Yeah, I think it was like 480. I wish I really remember the numbers, but I think it's at about 440 right now left on the loan.
Well, let's talk about the numbers then. So obviously you've rented out both sides of that duplex as of right now. Is that correct?
The one side I'm finishing. I just moved Friday into a new house, so it's getting last minute painting and cleaning will happen in the next 2 weeks.
Cool. Well, let's work off some mock numbers then. So what are you planning on renting each side out for?
So current rents on the one side with tenants is 1560, and then I will have the other side that I just renovated and fixed up. That'll probably go easily for 1850, if not 1900, depending. And I already have 2 tenants lined up who want to view it too, which is nice. And you think the rental market, everyone's like, oh, everything kind of going down, house prices are cooling off, people aren't renting as much, but I still find people are looking for housing, especially like non-apartment. So, I already have 2 people lined up, and they're like, we want to see it, and we don't care if everything's fixed or not. I just want to see if it'll work. So it kind of lets me think like, okay, I'll have this rented out by November 1st and start, I'll cash flow after utilities and everything, probably like $200-300, not a whole lot, but the other side with the renters in it, I think they're probably going to want to move out this spring because they didn't want a full year lease, which makes me think that. And so their side, I'll increase the rent probably about another $100 when I advertise it. So I'll be definitely cash flowing about $200 each side, probably easily.
That's what I was going to ask. So obviously, like gross rents right now, you're looking at about 3,500 roughly. Once that gets rented, obviously, and with the tenants that are in place on your one side already, did you give them a 6 month lease? Is that what you did?
It was like a 9-month lease or something. Like I wanted it to do a full year. They're like, "Oh no, can we do it to April?" I'm like, "Well, I don't want to go too much into the winter." So luckily I kind of said, or no, they wanted to go to February. I apologize. They wanted to go February. I went, "Okay, well, I don't want to go that I don't want to be in the winter, so can we go to March?" Because by March I can, they'll move out, do a little cleanup in April and advertise it, and that's perfect for the moving spring, summertime. But I think I already found a tenant who will move into there if they do move out. So
And did you give them a discount for a less than a year rental? Is that what I'm gathering? Or the last landlord had that in place, right?
the last landlord had him at 14 something. So I did a 6-month lease initially when I took over in October, or 7-month lease. So their lease expired in June. And then I increased their rent about $60, just because they were super nice, and I'm like, I want to keep them. I don't want to have too much switching out right now. So gave them $60 increase in rent, and then we kind of negotiated the month, or the term rather, but the price I wasn't really going to change up much. I didn't want to be a total dick about it, so I said that sounds fine. You want to keep on keeping on? That's fine with me.
Right. And what I want to bring up here, obviously, so when you rented out your Cheney house, you're cash flowing roughly $200 to $300. After you rent out this side, you're going to be cash flowing roughly $200 to $300, right?
Each side, yeah.
Each side. Okay, so yeah, so 3, 6, almost $800 a month cash flow just off your duplex and your single family residence. Now, that might not seem like a lot to a lot of people, but if you start doing what you're doing, and I know you will, like you add up these base hits, and it's going to have immense difference on your life, Dan.
Yeah, and for me, I don't need to. Again, this isn't my full-time job, so for me, it's a house every 1 to 2 years. I think is a good amount of pace. After the duplex, as you know, I was really looking at. Oh, I want to try a flip. Let me try this. See if I like it.
Let's talk about that if you don't mind, real quick, Dan.
Oh boy.
Well, Nick's got something to say.
Before we jump into the fix and flip, which I think is going to take some time, let's talk about these. I want to, because I think we're not mentioning one of the big key money makers of these properties that you have. You're in a position where you have this full-time, decently paying job, I believe, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I would imagine before you bought rentals, your tax liability was, what was it?
Explain what you mean by tax liability, because I think different things.
The taxes that you pay annually to the government, the IRS, the state.
Yeah, I think I was like in the 24 percentile for tax bracket.
So spending as much as you did, and I don't know, what is that, 20, 30 grand a year that you're spending in taxes, maybe?
I don't know. It comes out of the paycheck. I don't. It just.
Okay, you got to pay attention to this stuff. Okay, this is what I nerd out.
I have a CPA. I hire experts when I don't know how to do things.
No, it's okay. You don't maybe have to answer this, but maybe you'll notice it eventually. But you now have 3 rental properties, and all these mortgages that you're paying interest on, and these expenses that you deal with, and then the depreciation that you're going to be able to capture. Your tax liability, whether you know it or not, is going way down. So that's where you're going to make more money just saving your taxes than you will this $800 a month. I promise you that.
Well, I think the issue is I'm in a weird spot right now because I have a W-2 job that's pretty high earning, and I can't take too many deductions and write-offs because of that. Where if I could qualify as a real estate professional, it would definitely open up a lot. But because I'm not, I actually get limited on how many deductions and write-offs I can take. So one thing I did, again, going to meetups, connecting with people, I met up with this one guy who has a really good network, Dallas Richardson. I don't know if you know him. He's out of Idaho. He got me hooked up. So one of the first things we did with him, he got me a cost segregation study complete. So for those who don't know, it's a way to take depreciation faster than just the 27 and a half years the IRS allows you. So with the cost segregation, I pretty much have all of my, say, write-offs, hopefully that's the right term, done for the next 3 years, because I already have the max I can take for each year as a W-2 earner as well. And so the more I earn in income as a W-2 earner and not a real estate professional, it actually shrinks how much you can take for some of those write-offs as well. Depending, it all depends, and everyone's situation is different. But I guess for mine, that's kind of what we're doing. But there's some other little fun, unique things you could do with taxes, and I'm working that right now too with my CPA, and again, figuring it all out as we go. But I'm like you said, Nick. I think at some point I will be getting better tax advantages, probably once I start getting a little bit more on the bigger rental side. And once we get into the flip, we'll talk, because that's a business that actually will change my tax situation, because as a business, there's a lot more write-offs that you can take as business expenses, not as income expenses. So more to come, and hopefully a better tax season ahead next year. Next year.
Yeah, and I apologize for maybe getting a little bit too specific, but broadly, I mean, that a lot of people most of the time have a lot of tax advantages that they can take advantage of. Maybe their CPA is against it or something. Everyone's situation is different, but it's just something that not a lot of people even consider. They just think, okay, is this worth the cash flow? And they don't even figure things like the tax savings or the principal pay down every month that's just going into your equity, all these other little things. So now let's talk about this fix and flip. What
Oh boy.
are you regretting your decision yet?
Some days yes, most days not yet.
Okay.
There's more positive than negative so far. We'll wait till I list it, and then we'll figure that out.
Yeah, and just for context on everyone, obviously Dan came to me as a hard money broker. We set him up with this deal. It's not that it was a bad deal. It's just it was a lot to take on for a first time fix and flipper, if I were to say so myself. We had it plenty collateralized, like you had a big down payment on it, which was great. So my lenders were like, "Great, I think we're good. You know, our numbers make sense on our end." Yeah, but just tell us about it from your perspective, obviously, because when you got this thing was a big boy problem. It felt like.
It definitely was a very a rookie move to take on such a complicated project. So I was in the market for a fix and flip just because I wanted to try it out. I'm like, okay, my goal. So I think we did this at your house, Jeremy, last New Year's. Did we set our New Year's goals together? Or we talked about our vision boards for the year.
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
So my goal this year was to buy 2 houses. So I already had a primary residence. I knew I wasn't going to be moving or doing anything of that. So I'm like, let me buy a flip. Let's foray into that world. So I was on the market for a flip. Found one ironically on the MLS. Somebody had listed it. Another investor. That should have been a little bit of a red alarm. But it didn't. I said let's just look at it. So made the offer. Was looking at numbers. I was still not quite 100% understanding how all the numbers worked. I'll be perfectly honest. That's kind of rookie move too. One thing I'm learning is know your numbers, but not just know your numbers, know how much you can flex in all of your numbers, up or down, versus saying, this is what I got. And they're like, well, this is what I'm going to give you. And if you don't know where to negotiate, you're just like, I guess this sounds good. I'll agree. So yeah, so it was on the MLS, talked him down $35 or $40,000, something like that. So I ended up buying a single family 1905 home with tenants that were in the current eviction. Yep. They, they were in the eviction process. Bought that for $116,000. So doesn't sound awful until you look at the house. It literally was a drug house. The city had marked it in their code enforcement like, oh, methamphetamine production or use. Like it was definitely a drug house, and it looked like it. Graffiti everywhere, like signs that said, "If you don't live here, don't use the laundry" or things like that. You're like, that's what I got into. Yes, it was awesome.
Right. And obviously I came and helped you out the other weekend, and that police officer that came by, I want to kind of tell that story. So a police officer, while we were loading up the dumpster, by the way, find yourself a hard money lender who will also help you demo a house. I'm your guy. But so yeah, we were loading up the dumpster, getting all the drywall and all the gross crap out of the house because you did have people come and demo it. But a police officer came around the block, he slowed, and he came up and he parked for a second and then he drove off. And I'm like, okay, well, we're not doing anything illegal. So he came back to the property 2 minutes later and he's like, did there used to be a garage here? And I was like, yeah, there used to be one, it burnt down. And he's like, oh yeah, a guy got shot and killed in the garage. And I'm like, good to know.
Yes, ironically, I did find out apparently Washington is a non-reportable state for any deaths. I only knew that after you had said something, and I called my realtor. I'm like, "Hey, should I have known this?" He's like, "Nope, doesn't have to happen in Washington." I'm like, "Good to know."
Which is wild because it doesn't seem like it's in a bad neighborhood or anything, but I do think you had some bad apples living there. Tell us about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, so this was so the story from what I remember, the investor I bought it from, the lease was on the mother who had unexpectedly died. So I think the daughter had just was living there, and that's how she was on the lease somehow. But she and a whole bunch of people she would have in and out of the house were there, and so didn't pay rent, burnt down the garage previous to my purchase. So the previous investor who bought it in September of last year started the eviction process. And for those who don't know, Washington is a very complicated state for eviction. So there's a lot of steps. And so he had to start with step one, and it takes several months. So started it. It was in the finalized process when I bought it. So a couple of weeks the eviction would have went through. But when I bought it, went up to the owner, leasee, whatever you want to call it, said, "Hey, this eviction's going to happen. If I give you $300, you give me keys, you walk away in 1 week." And because she already knew the eviction got issued and was very, very likely to happen, I didn't tell her I was not going to probably try to finish it because it's way too much time and court crap I didn't want to deal with. Took $300 and gave me the keys, promptly moved out as much as they could. I said, take whatever you want, but they did leave a lot of junk in the house. Like, I mean, like bikes, like probably 10 bicycles in the house. And like, oh, it was nasty. Like, yeah, there was a ton of stuff. Like, I filled up 2 6-yard dumpsters just of their stuff before we even started demo. There was a lot of crap. So that was my first foray in cash for keys. That was not a bad one, but it's been like the first month it was very sketchy because people would still come around not knowing they left and try to like knock on the doors, try to get in. So like I made sure I boarded up all the windows, like all that kind of stuff. But it was just super nasty in that house. Like cleaned up when we were picking up carpets, there was like dead rats everywhere. Well, Jeremy knows it has just a smell.
It's got an aura about it that's you get home and I want to burn not only my clothes but my skin.
Yes. So when I would come home, there's a protocol. I was told, by Ethan, he's like, "Hey, you need to take your shoes off on the doorstep. You step in, you take like making sure there's no installation or anything nasty, shake it off on the outside. You come in, you take all your clothes off. I don't care if anyone can see you. And then you go shower because it was nasty. It's like you leave, you're like, I just want to burn my clothes." It was really bad.
And Dan, Jeremy showed me photos after he got done helping you with the demo. And I've done a lot of fix and flips. I've bought some dogs before, but the pictures he showed me made me shit myself. Not kidding at all. It was like the scene from The Walking Dead, but like the scene that's like 12 years later.
That's a good way to describe that, yeah.
Yeah, just the scariest looking renovation project I've ever seen. I wish we can share photos with our audience. Maybe we can upload some.
Oh yeah, I have a bunch of photos.
I took a video which I think captured it really well too. I was just showing kind of the house, but in the video you can hear just crows all around in the background being like, "Ah, ah, 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 And I'm
There's like crows flying through the house.
yeah.
That should be the opening video for this podcast. Like, oh, don't be like Dan and buy some crazy, drug house.
Maybe that could be your profile photo for this episode. We could just have
Yeah, we can still go there. There's no siding on it still, so whenever you're ready.
Yeah, but like obviously, so you bought this house for 118,000, right? You're putting
116, yeah.
116, excuse me. Yeah. So how much? What's your renovation budget on that?
So renovation budget was about 85,000 initially. We say initially because after all the stuff got removed, we found a little bit of a structural issue per se, and by say per se, I mean a real structural issue.
It's a real thing, yes.
Yep. So years ago, decades ago, and you could see once we removed the floors, they took out a load-bearing wall. And I don't think they definitely didn't restructure it appropriately. So what happened is all of the weight of the house is sitting on two 2x4s that are like together that go to the basement. Yeah. So, that was an unexpected cost. So I had engineers out, $1,000 later, I got engineering plans and had one or two guys look at what we needed to do, looked at the plans. Again, this goes back to like having somebody who you can like having that network. And I know you guys probably have talked about it in a bunch of your podcasts and we talk about it all the time, but reached back to a few people. Kelly Clark is like, oh, I got this great guy. He used to move houses for a living. So he looked at the plans, came by the house, is like, yeah, I could do it. So he's there this week. He was pouring new footers, and Saturday he's going to get steel beams, put them through the basement, jack up the house, put new actual structure into the basement, and get everything correctly done. So that way the house is structurally safe, and then we can continue on with the normal project. But that was probably going to be about a $12,000, $10,000 mistake, as I call it, learning experience.
I still think you should burn the thing down, Dan, to be honest with you. I think you should just burn it to the ground, but, call your insurance and say you didn't. I'm not saying commit fraud, but I'm saying like find a way to burn that house down.
Yeah, I'm too much into it now that I'm like, if this was the very beginning, I'd be like, hell yeah. But I've got too many hours of my own sweat equity into removing drywall, insulation, nails to the foot, the usual.
Yep. There's two options basically you can do. You can quit everything and you can have the hard money lender foreclose on the project, which you lose your down payment, you lose all your time, or you can just kind of muscle through it like you've been doing. And you're making the right call, to be honest with you. Not only is this a great learning experience, but it's just a great life experience, I think, with this house that you're going to have. Yeah, obviously, when are you planning on selling it? When are you planning on being done with your renovations?
So we're luckily moving along pretty at a good clip now. We kind of have everything lined up, siding, windows next week, electrician about the same time, and plumber the same time. So hopefully we should be done about early February is kind of my hope. Assuming I could probably do some of it myself, I will probably be doing some of it myself as well. We'll be moving along. Hopefully, 4 months 3-4 months from now is pretty reasonable because there's nothing left inside to do other than add stuff. So that's all, it's pretty empty.
Let's talk about the numbers real quick if you are comfortable sharing.
Oh boy, yes.
So you bought this place for 116. You had an $85,000 budget. Sounds like that's gone up to 100 or so.
Yeah, we're probably about 105 overall now.
How much do you think you'll be spending total on financing costs?
So with the hard money lender or just other financing as well?
Yeah, total financing fees, hard money fees, private money fees, all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't have the what I wrote down in front of me, but so Blake and Jess were awesome, and I gave them the numbers as well. They lent me money from their IRA, and Jeremy as well. So I owe them both together probably their down payment plus probably about $3,600 total, $3,700 total between both of them. And then the hard money lender, I've got, what was it, 3 points on the back end, Jeremy, is what we did on that one.
I'd have to check, but yeah, somewhere around there.
I think it was about 3 points on the back end, which was nice, so I didn't have to pay up front. And that loan was about actual $80,000, I think. Again, numbers aren't in front of me.
Yeah, numbers aren't in front of me either, but they all sound like you're in the right area.
How long will the loan go about?
It was for 1 year, but I built in 6 months of reserves, so therefore I'm not making any monthly payments till February. And so I wasn't. I know how that works, but I wasn't sure if there was anything else I needed to do. So I actually called the service organization because they send me monthly bills. So I'm like, oh my God, do I have to pay this bill? I thought I had reserves because it's built in, but it doesn't quite say that exactly on the statement that they give you. So they called it like, yep, you're good till February. You have to make a partial payment in February, and that's it. So built that in, and that's why I'm hopefully going to be finished in February. So if anything, I have to make a small payment, and then we sell and go on our way.
Okay. So does it sound like your all-in cost should be roughly around 232 or so?
I looked. I think the numbers again. The originally I think we were closer to about 228, but with the new budget, I think it's probably closer to 240 all in for everything.
240 all in. Okay. And so that includes your holding costs for up to a year. And then what do you think you'll realistically sell this property for?
I'm probably gonna list it for 270, honestly, but then really settle on about 260 to 265.
So
And
let's call it 260.
yeah,
Um, and then did you already work out a deal with a real estate agent or anything like that? Can you go to the investor that you bought this thing from and see if he'll give you a free listing for the headache?
So luckily, I use Billy D's as my real estate agent, and he's been really good, and he makes deals happen no matter what. So like even on the purchase of this, we were kind of getting there was a lot of back and forth on the closing date. There was a lot of like little last minute changes, and we probably did like several extensions. So to make the deal work and not piss off the seller, Billy reduced his commission to make things happen. So on the selling, I told him, yeah, we'll do it. And he's like, I'll do what I need to make it work because he knew numbers are getting tight because I talk to him all the time. So, he's really good about, if he needs to, we'll figure out either payment later, commission, or, I buy another house with him and he makes it back,
That
you
repeat
know.
business is worth more than the 1% that he's taken for sure. So
Yeah. So assuming he discounts your commission a little bit, you still pay a buyer's agent. There, you got the Washington excise tax. I mean, it seems like you might actually slide out of this breaking even.
I've already relegated myself to potentially lose 5 to 10,000 of my own money, but in the grand scheme of things, a $5,000 education is not terrible considering, college, it was like, $30,000 a year. So if I lose five, you know what? But again, this goes back to taxes and having those experts. I continuously talk with my CPA every 4 to 5 months, and she's like, "Yeah, if you take a loss, that's actually not terrible because that loss will actually be deducted from your income, and it'll help you not come down a whole tax bracket, but potentially have less tax liability. And so I may actually not have to pay as much taxes. It wouldn't be this tax season, sadly, but next year. So there's some advantages of maybe having a little bit of a loss, even if I have to."
Yeah, that's what's so crazy about real estate. I remember listening to this podcast, Bigger Pockets. Do you guys know the guy from that rental income show, that HGTV show, rental income? I can't remember what the guy's name is, but he was like one of the only HGTV flipper guys that like just did it for rentals. And then
did we see him in Boise? Was that him?
no, but he made a good comment. He's like, once I did lose money on a flip, but I didn't really lose money because my CPA just said, "Oh, we'll just take this loss, and you'll pay less taxes, and you're good." And it was just an eye opener for him. He's like, "Man, you can't even lose money in real estate, even if you try." If you're doing, taking, if that's not all you're doing, if you have other income sources.
And I think the rule is you're supposed to show a loss on paper, right? And then show a gain with assets or whatever it is. So like there's other ways to make up that 5,000 on the back end. Obviously, you've got your rentals going. You're going to continue to buy and make smart decisions, and you're going to you'll just eat that 5,000 like it's nothing, man. Eat it for breakfast.
Well, maybe not for breakfast, swallow it pretty hard. But at the same time, like the thing is, the money's already in the assets, so like the deal's made on the buy. So at this point, if it is what it is. But I'll be honest, there's also some good feelings with this house because it was the worst house in the neighborhood. You kind of bring up the property values of the neighbors, and it's funny because after the people got evicted, I introduced myself to all of the neighbors, and they gave me their cell phones, and they've been like super helpful. Like, oh, hey, there's somebody at your house. Are they supposed to be there? I'll be like, no, call the police or things like that. So there's some other like social good things about this flip that I like versus just like paint the inside and try to sell it for 15,000 more. It's a full on like make it nice, give a family in the area a home. And the cool thing is the across the street neighbor, he does fences and he's like, hey, I appreciate you getting rid of all these people who have been a nuisance. I'm going to fix your fence and only charge you for material costs. My labor I'll give you for free. So he's going to kind of fix most of the chain link fence that's messed up like in the next couple months and just kind of make it nice. And I just pay not even labor, I just pay materials. And it's like I think I even have some. So essentially like those are the good relationships you build in some of these things, but it's also like just that sometimes those good warm feelings that you have when you do some of these things where you take a lot on, you take a loss, but you know what, you do something good. And I don't know, sometimes that happens, sometimes it
You're
doesn't.
also building up your network, obviously. Like if this guy does a really good job on the fence, like just keep his number in your pocket. So all your other jobs, you've got a fence guy.
That's exactly it. And like with this whole project, the guy who I'm using as my general contractor, he replaced the doors in my duplex, and I enjoyed the work he did. So I said, "Hey, I know you're a general contractor. I want to give you the offer, the first bid at this one, and look at it." And he's relatively new to the general contracting world. He's only been doing it for like 3 years, but super great to work with. Overall, pretty well communicative, and he's got people. And it's not just like he charges a ton of money. He's like, let me get a second electrician that I know because the last guy was a little too expensive for your budget, and he found some guy that's a little bit cheaper and does a just as good job. So. A lot of time, one thing I did inadvertently on my duplex, I had like three contractors do like little jobs, like put a railing in, do windows, do doors. And that was kind of like my way of like, okay, who was the best to communicate with, who gave me maybe not the best price, but at least an honest price where I'm like, I know I'm not getting totally scammed and the work is good and I can see it over a couple months and it's not, oh, you did it and oh, the work shoddy. Oh, you put the nail in through here wrong, that kind of stuff. So I was kind of like a tryout. Yeah, I was a tryout of a contractor essentially. And we always hear horror stories of contractors. So, did little scale things, and if this little thing worked, the big thing hopefully should. And so far, it's been really good. He's been very helpful, kind of walked me through things, and he's been like, "Yeah, you can't do all this demo yourself. Let me call somebody. I know somebody who can get a crew out there and help you." And they did great. They did a half a day or three-quarters of a day and literally destroyed the whole bottom floor and took everything out that needed to. And then Jeremy and I cleaned it up.
It's good stuff. Well, Nick, do you have any I know we're running just a little bit long on this episode, but it has been awesome just talking with Dan. Nick, do you have any final things before we get into the wind down questions?
Oh God, wind down questions. Oh,
What's the biggest thing, Dan, that you've learned becoming a real estate investor?
probably how to critically think and think on your feet. I think is important. And two, it's not the big jumps that define you. It's the little things you do every day or every week. So I'm in this boot camp with Matt Brunner, who I bought that house from, that drug house from, ironically. But every week he asks, "What action did you take? What action do you take?" And Jess and Blake told me the same thing right when we got to get go. They're like, "Hey, the investors you want to talk to and partner with are the ones that have a different accomplishment every month when they stand up and introduce themselves. If you have the same guy saying the same thing for 6 months, they're stagnant. They're not taking action. They're not moving and learning or moving forward. So it's the little things. Make the one offer every week. You know what? One offer. Who you don't worry about if it gets accepted. It's one offer. You took one little step.
That's pretty insightful. Yeah, something I heard recently that really stuck with me was like the people the difference between very successful people and those that maybe aren't is that successful people, it's like what they do on the days that they're not motivated regularly that really separate. Like if you're if you're not motivated but you're still working out every day and you're still showing up to work, you're still making the calls, and even if you're not motivated, those are the people that really end up moving the needle. And I'm doing a horrible job of rephrasing it, but it's similar to that. It's similar to that. All right, Jeremy, let's do the wind down questions because we're Our editor's going to get mad. It's over an hour.
Dave, I'm sorry. I love you. I appreciate you, man. But we are running a little bit long on this one, and that's okay. Dan, I do want to say thank you again for joining us on the Investor Shed podcast. We do have some predetermined questions that I did not let you know about, so these are going to be a surprise to you. Get ready to rack your brain, Dan. So if you had one business or investing book you recommend every single investor read, what would that be?
It's actually a leadership book, but I think it's really helpful. It's called From Good to Great, and it's why some companies fail and why other ones are successful. And it's all about those little pieces that build to the bigger, like why some companies just do so well. It's the little pieces they do throughout their career.
Good to Great. That's the red book, right?
Yep, little red book. I love it.
I haven't read it yet, so that'll come up next. Next question I have for you is: if you had $30 million gifted to one of your bank accounts, what's the first thing you would spend it on?
Ooh, $30 million? Like the Powerball the other day? if I won and took the cash value, I think it would be just paying off all the debt first. Being debt free, I think, is super important, and not owing anybody is good. And then after that, I would probably buy a cash flowing asset that I don't need to do a lot of work to, or can like set it and forget it. So probably commercial real estate with a triple net lease. No work. They already pay the rent, and you just kind of, they even maintain the building. You just walk away.
Good stuff. If you had any advice for an investor looking to get started on their first or second deal, what would that be?
Learn a lot. Talk to people, make a network. They will, don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask for help. It's, things I think I would have done better is, especially on the flip, ask for people to look at it, ask for more opinions before I pulled the trigger. But, just pull the trigger sometimes.
You don't know what you don't know. And I love that, Dan. Next question for you is: how do you define success?
Ooh, my success is being able to retire by the age of 55 and travel where I want to and do what I want to. That's however I get there, one house a year, one house every 3 or 4 years. It just depends, but that's my success. And everyone should have their own level. Don't compare, say, what do I want, and work backwards.
It's all about your own personal story too, so that's really good. And when you're not investing, what do you like to do with your free time?
I like to go travel and hiking are two of my favorite things, and usually board games with Jeremy and Nick. Otherwise, when we have time, it takes a lot for us to get together.
We got to do that again, and I got to talk to Nick about Friendsgiving too that we talked about. So we'll try to do that. Last question for you, Dan: where can people find out more about you?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm on social media, but not really on social media. Usually they have to contact Jeremy or Nick to reach me.
We're his gatekeepers.
That's right. I'll get my email. I'll send it to you guys.
You talk to me to get to Dan. I'm the guy who gets you to Dan. You understand?
Yeah, you talk to me and I'll give you Jeremy's info. He'll get you Dan's info.
And if you happen to come across Dan's info, he'll direct you to Nick, who will direct you to me, and I'll direct you back to Dan. And speaking of back to Dan, Nick, take us away, my friend.
It's quite the enigma. No, I'll try to get you one of my emails because I use a few. Oh.
We'll put it in the show notes. It sounds like your dogs are having a good time, so this is a good time for us to kind of jet out of here.
Yeah, thank you for everyone that's listening out there that actually stuck with it to the end. Dan, you had some amazing advice today. Thank you for sharing your story and being so open with your finances with us. We all appreciate it. I think we've all learned something. Shut your stupid dogs up. And
hey, I'm like Nick. I have a new dog. It's going crazy.
All right. See you guys.
Thank you so much for checking out the Investor Shed podcast. If you enjoyed your time, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow along on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram at The Investor Shed for shorts and promos about each episode. Do you want to be a guest or know someone who has great real estate investing advice and stories? Reach out to us at theinvestorshed@gmail.com.